Okay, so now we move on to digital prototypes. This is a prototype that I made in Roll20. It's for pen and paper RPGs like Pathfinder and Dark Heresy, and this is exactly what this prototype is. It's called Seeking Sleeping Stars. This is a game where players basically go through the galaxy on a spaceship and explore, or maybe be a mercenary, maybe a mercenary crew, or they do other things. But the idea is basically that each player gets a role on the ship, and they get a few abilities, but that's it. They don't get any other upgrades. They aren't developing their own character as much with attributes. They can still develop them story-wise, because it's an RPG, and developing things story-wise is kind of one of the great things to do in it. But most of the time, players will be encouraged to upgrade the ship instead. The ship is like the major point in this game, the kind of main character sheet. They all develop this one ship, and they kind of go through the galaxy as a crew. They are a team, a consolidated unit, for example. So that's the idea of the game. Basically, players use a ship, they explore the galaxy, which is what's up here. This is the galaxy. This is a sector map which we were using. It was a small sector map because it was only a one-shot. We played for about 6 hours, which is a one-shot is a short campaign, by the way. So a campaign would normally last multiple sessions. We played one. So because of that, I stripped out a lot of the things that they would know, a lot of the information that they would get. I basically took a blueprint offline for the ship and repurposed that instead of giving them all the shipbuilding rules and stuff like that. And when they build a ship, they get like systems that they can buy, and they need to hire a crew and stuff like that. So all that stuff is in the rules. So combat in this game, there's two types of combat. There's personal combat and there's ship combat. But the ship combat is the more interesting part because it's in space, and it's of course one of the difficulties of doing ship combat in games is that normally most people, or most like developers, will develop it on a 2D map. But because I think ship combat is, well, of course, ship combat is 3D. You're kind of going to be up, down, which ways. It's six axis of freedom, I think is the term for it. But basically, the idea is that basically I've developed a system which is called the combat hex, where basically the ship has 6 sectors, and different rooms and systems are on different sectors of their ship. So, for example, the turrets are on the front right sector of the ship, but they can fire at the front right and they can fire at the back right. So this ship could fire at this ship and this ship, for example. They can't move out of the center hex. The center hex is literally where this is their hex. This is where they stay. But they can turn the ship to face these other hexes, these other locations to readjust. So, for example, the ship has a main cannon. Maybe they want to fire the main cannon at this ship, so they'll turn the ship this direction, fire the main cannon that direction, and then everything else kind of moves around them. But they also have abilities which maneuver the ship, and the way that you maneuver a ship is basically you'll have information about how the maneuver is done and what happens when the maneuver is done. So, for example, there might be a maneuver which flips everything along a vertical axis, so everything will end up on the opposite side of them. So maybe they flip the ship around, so instead of their port side facing them, their starboard side faces them instead, and they basically flip all the characters on the right hand side to their left hand side instead. So that would do that. So that's different things in the ship will allow them to do different maneuvers. So that's combat. I won't go too much further into detail about it, but ships also have like a morale value and a health value, and they might run away or stuff like that. And your ship can take damage to specific rooms. They can take 2 damage to each room. If it takes 1, it's unusable or has a negative effect on the ship or something else. If it takes 2 damage, it's decompressurized, and sometimes that's not so bad because if they hit storage rooms, then you might just lose some cargo. If they hit the bridge, for example, then, well, you're going to have a lot of bad times because 1, you can't be in there without a spacesuit, and 2, most of the systems in there have a penalty to use them and stuff like that. So that's combat. Personal combat is a lot more simple. It's mostly you stand in a room, and depending on what you roll on the dice, maybe your character jumps behind cover or manages to get a hit in or whatever. But it's mostly just dice rolling, so personal combat isn't explored so much. Another thing that's explored in this game a lot is the idea that you receive a lot of information. Your crew receives a lot of information, and your crew needs to decide what they want to do with it. So, for example, if they get access to databases, then the crew might receive. Oh, by the way, these things for the GM's benefit, I have created kind of blocks which they can just take and then fill in. And now I've stripped down a lot of these blocks for this one, so this is a very short block, but normally they'd have a lot more information. But this is information about star A2, so A2, this star here. You see this one here, this orange one. Has 3 planets. So they say, okay, we might want to find out more about Zeratul Ax, so they get more information about Zeratul Ax. Okay, what do we want to look at from here? Well, we know that they've got a species from Zeratul Ax called the Carapol. We're going to look at Carapol, so we pull out information about Carapol and get information about major colonies and diplomatic status and physical appearance, culture, history, stuff like that. So that's the idea, is that they can retrieve a lot of these things from different databases. This one shot was based on the idea that some of this information is wrong, and they have to find out what's wrong and they need to update it. That was the one shot that they had to do. And they had, I think, 2 weeks to do so. Then the comms. One of the things that the comms thing, one of the things that the players can choose as a role is the comms officer. And the comms officer, they don't have any specific special abilities, but they get a big load of comms data every day. In game day, and then they can basically sift through it, decide what's important, and inform the rest of the crew. Because it was a one shot, and we didn't have that much time, I kind of pre-sifted the. Well, I didn't fill in the blocks that I made. I just gave them the important bits of information. So the comms data, in comms data. So for example. This day they were in a sector where they were told by 2 different groups to stay out of it, and they got information that there's combat in the sector and there's distress signals going on and there's a large ship in the sector and stuff like that. So that's kind of one of the major things of the game, is information and kind of deciding what information is. Right. Anyway, so that's the idea of the Seeking Sleeping Stars prototype.